A mysterious witch stood before a massive armored monster, marking the beginning of a tale about humanity confronting overwhelming threats. Amid a fierce battle, the monster rushed through a crowd of goblins and defeated them with overwhelming strength. A few days earlier, the creature had awakened in an unfamiliar body and slowly realized something was terribly wrong. Shock filled his mind as he understood that he was no longer human but a monster without an identity. Fragments of memory returned, revealing that he had once been an ordinary man altered by a gene enhancement experiment. While recalling his past, the monster remembered growing suspicious after hearing that nations across the continent were fighting one another without end. Further investigation revealed a shocking truth. Although he joined the experiment at 18, the realization struck hard as he examined the abandoned facility and concluded that he had remained inside a capsule for 200 years. Nearby, another capsule contained a lifeless test subject. Questions filled his mind as he wondered what became of his empire and the family he had left behind. After calming himself, the monster decided that worrying without evidence would solve nothing, and focused on finding a way out. Determined to learn the truth, he pushed open a nearby door and began exploring the facility beyond the laboratory. As he moved through halls filled with corpses, he discovered a small matchstick and kept it for later use. His progress stopped at a massive gate. A new thought crossed his mind. Considering his large and muscular appearance, he wondered if his monster body possessed enough strength to break through. Believing his new body possessed immense strength, the monster slammed his fist into the sealed gate and tested its durability. Instead of breaking, the impact sent him rolling backward across the floor, proving the barrier was far stronger than expected. After recovering, he accepted that escaping through the underground facility was his only remaining option. Determination pushed him onward as he refused to die in isolation or remain trapped as a monster forever. Unexpectedly, a strange sense of calm spread through his body. Yunos stopped attacking the gate and realized the facility had been designed specifically to contain monsters like him. A different idea emerged. Since the gate was too strong, he decided to test the surrounding walls instead. Gathering his strength, Yunos struck the wall repeatedly until cracks spread across its surface. Moments later, the barrier collapsed with a thunderous impact, opening a path to the outside world. Stepping through the breach, Yunos confirmed the experiment's success, after witnessing his ability to shatter solid rock with a single hand. After escaping the facility, Yunos searched for a higher vantage point and effortlessly climbed a towering cliff using his enhanced body. Reaching the summit, he tested another ability. Several unusual features soon caught his attention, leaving him silently processing what he had discovered. Stretching beyond the horizon was an enormous forest unlike anything he remembered from the Empire. Concern replaced his excitement as Yunos realized the unfamiliar wilderness might confirm that the world had changed drastically during his long absence. Yunos noticed the strange calmness again and realized it was another ability implanted into his modified body. Memories surfaced, revealing a function that automatically suppressed emotions, which could interfere with combat performance. Although the ability helped him stay rational, it reminded him of the scientists who had treated humans as weapons. Rejecting that purpose, Yunos leaped from the cliff and landed below with tremendous force. Catching his breath, he renewed his resolve and refused to live solely as a weapon created by others. While traveling through the forest, Yunos noticed a massive structure ahead and quickly moved closer to investigate it. Upon arrival, he discovered the wreckage of an airship hidden among the trees. Searching the remains, Yunos found a flight log and carefully examined the surviving records inside. The documents revealed that the airship had crashed after being attacked by a monster over 200 years earlier. Using the recorded route and travel time, Yunos finally estimated his current location and gained a clearer understanding of where he was. Before continuing his journey, Yunos ate the remaining biscuits from the wrecked airship and noticed he no longer felt hunger. Afterward, he headed east, hoping to find a town where survivors or useful information might still exist. While running through the forest, Yunos imagined how ordinary people would react to his monstrous appearance and grew uneasy. Suddenly, a powerful smell reached him, overwhelming his senses and forcing him to stop. Following the scent through the bushes, Yunos realized that its source was nearby and carefully moved closer to investigate. Following the scent, Yunos arrived at a goblin camp hidden within the forest and carefully observed the situation from a distance. To his surprise, the source of the smell was a captured elf surrounded by goblins. Although disgusted by what he witnessed, Yunos forced himself to stay calm and think before acting. Remembering the many abilities built into his body, he prepared to test whether they could work against living monsters. With his decision made, Yunos stepped out from hiding and boldly entered the goblins' territory. The moment Yunos revealed himself, he rushed into the goblin camp and struck with overwhelming force. Bodies scattered across the battlefield as every attack erased another enemy, turning the encounter into a complete rout. Within moments, the camp fell silent. Surrounded by defeated goblins, Yunos realized the battle had ended almost instantly. Looking over the aftermath, he understood why the fight had been so one-sided. The goblins were far weaker than him. Despite the victory, Yunos felt uneasy after enjoying the battle more than expected and questioned his reaction. Far away from the forest, a peaceful town carried on with its daily routine. Unaware of the events unfolding beyond its borders, among the residents was a young adventurer speaking with a confident witch about money, work, and future opportunities. The witch casually teased him while discussing their recent activities. Their conversation continued as she challenged him to improve himself before expecting any special attention from her. Moments later, two companions arrived with urgent news regarding an exploration mission that had taken place in the forest. Back in town, the witch confirmed the forest expedition and showed little interest in hearing more complaints about the ambitious explorer. Meanwhile, deep within the great forest of Floridas, Yunos continued forward alone. A woman was pinned down during a violent struggle. Fear filled her face as she realized she could not escape the danger surrounding her. Across the ruined area, strange creatures moved among the debris. Yunos rushed into battle and launched a powerful attack, keeping the momentum. Yunos pressed forward. Another heavy blow finished the monster before it could fight back. With the battle over, Yunos prepared the defeated monster as food. He quietly ate the meal and left only scraps behind. After cooking a crocodile monster, Yunos tried eating it. The taste was awful, and he could barely keep it down despite needing food. While drinking boiled river water, he reflected on becoming a monster. The shock of waking up in a strange body still lingered in his mind. Although he had little appetite, Yunos forced himself to eat canned food. Survival mattered more than comfort. Thoughts of his sisters gave him hope. He believed their bloodline had survived, and that he might one day find their descendants. Determined to continue living, Yunos considered a future among humans. While resting beside a small fire, Yunos considered the possibility that his homeland, the Floridic Empire, had already fallen. Remembering the empire's advanced technology and military strength, he found it difficult to believe such a powerful nation could simply disappear. After comparing nearby countries, Yunos focused on the northern kingdom of Canaan. Another option came to mind, the Line-Hell Republic. Since monsters were also considered part of nature there, Yunos hoped he might be accepted, though uncertainty still remained in his heart. As Yunos thought about traveling to the elves' homeland, he remembered their mastery of magic. He also considered the eastern kingdom of Caesarea. However, several concerns quickly convinced him to avoid heading south or east. Reports of numerous monsters and professional exterminators made the region even less appealing. After weighing his options, he chose to travel north toward Canaan. Even so, thoughts of monster hunters lingered in his mind. The possibility of being hunted reminded him to stay alert throughout the journey. Around a campfire, a group of adventurers discussed their exploration mission and searched for clues about what they were supposed to find. During the conversation, attention shifted to the former empire. Others speculated about hidden treasures left behind. However, doubts remained about whether such discoveries would still hold value. Soon, the serious discussion faded. The group relaxed and treated the journey more like a pleasant outing. Seeing the mood change, an older companion gently comforted a younger member, bringing the gathering to a peaceful close. The adventurers relaxed around the campfire. Friendly teasing and laughter filled the evening, as the group enjoyed a rare moment of peace, watching the cheerful gathering. One member believed those calm days would continue for a long time. No one sensed the danger approaching. As the mood grew brighter, a quiet feeling of unease appeared. Without warning, a sudden attack struck one of the adventurers. Shock spread through the group as enemies emerged from every direction. Amid the chaos, a companion was thrown away, leaving the others horrified. The ambush threw the camp into chaos. One adventurer fled from attacking goblins, while another companion was already lying motionless nearby. Moments later, a massive ogre appeared behind the goblin force. The mage quickly assessed the battlefield. Recognizing the enemy as an organized goblin army led by an ogre, she prepared to fight back. Despite her experience, the situation proved worse than expected. As the battle intensified, she discovered a critical problem. Their anti-magic shield was gone, leaving the group exposed to greater danger. The mage realized the anti-magic shield was gone. As enemy numbers closed in, she feared her spells would fail and doom the entire group. Before she could react, goblins rushed through the battlefield. Their formation collapsed, and panic spread among the adventurers. The attackers quickly overwhelmed the two women. Surrounded on all sides, they struggled desperately to resist. Powerless to stop the assault, The mage watched her companion suffer while regret filled her heart. Fear consumed both women as the goblins tightened their control. As despair overwhelmed her, the woman prepared herself for the worst. Suddenly, a powerful impact interrupted the goblins surrounding her. The attackers froze and turned toward the source of the disturbance. Confusion replaced their confidence in an instant. Emerging from the dust and ruins, a massive armored figure stepped forward. The newcomer silently surveyed the battlefield. Its presence alone drew the attention of every creature nearby. Positioning himself between the woman and the goblins, Yunos blocked their path. The rescue had finally arrived. Yunos stepped between the goblins and the captured woman. His sudden arrival confused everyone and halted the attack for a moment. Ignoring the humans around him, Yunos focused on the goblins. He had only come because their presence had drawn him to the area. Surveying the battlefield, he noticed the wounded adventurers and the remaining captives. The situation was far worse than he had expected. Without hesitation, Yunos grabbed nearby goblins and threw them aside. As the woman watched in disbelief, Yunos continued clearing a path. A strange magical attack struck Yunos from behind. Instead of falling, he quickly turned toward the source and searched for the caster. Recognizing the energy, Yunos realized the goblin shaman responsible for the earlier attack was nearby. The shaman unleashed another powerful spell, yet Yunos pushed through the attack and struck back. With the shaman defeated, Yunos shifted his attention to the massive ogre commanding the goblin army, facing a stronger opponent than any he had fought before. Yunos welcomed the challenge and prepared for battle. The ogre launched a heavy attack and struck Yunos directly. Despite the force behind the blow, the damage proved far less than expected. Watching from a distance, the adventurers feared the worst. Disappointed by the ogre's strength, Yunos counterattacked. A single punch sent the monster crashing backward and stunned the surrounding goblins. Without slowing down, he leaped into the enemy ranks and tore through the goblin army. Soon, the battlefield fell silent. Surrounded by defeated enemies, Yunos realized he had once again wiped out an entire group of goblins. After defeating the goblins, Yunos approached the survivors. Since he needed supplies for his journey, Yunos began collecting useful items from the battlefield as payment for his assistance. The woman allowed him to take what he wanted, but became alarmed when he picked up an important sword belonging to her group. Although she tried to stop him, Yunos could not understand her words. Realizing the misunderstanding would continue, Yunos decided to leave. Meanwhile, the adventurers watched helplessly as he walked away with their sword. Yunos walked away with the sword while the woman watched in frustration. Hearing her shout behind him, Yunos assumed she was upset, believing they would never meet again. He calmly left the battlefield behind. Yunos sat beside a campfire, burdened by regret as he reviewed the events that had led him to this point. Curiosity soon replaced his thoughts when he inspected the sword taken from the woman he had rescued, and discovered it was a rare magic weapon. After testing the blade, he realized it could pierce his tough skin, revealing both its strength and great value. Thoughts of the woman returned, and Yunos reflected on the friendship he had hoped might grow between them. As night settled over the area, he watched Diera prepare to leave, uncertain about what awaited them afterward. Before leaving, Diera promised Lena that she would recover the stolen sword and return safely. Instead of accepting the farewell, Lena rushed forward and clung tightly to Diera, unable to hide her fear. Seeing Lena's distress, Diera realized the girl believed she might never come back and could be lost, like others before. Although determined to continue, Diera embraced Lena and tried to reassure her through her actions rather than words. After hearing Lena's feelings, Diera stood firm and made it clear that their views were different, refusing to surrender to fear. While resting beside the campfire, Yunos suddenly recalled Diera's parting words and felt encouraged by her determination. As the night grew deeper, he noticed that his body showed no sign of needing sleep. Rather than ignoring the issue, Yunos decided to treat staying awake as a form of training and observation. Checking his belongings, he realized his backpack was already full of potions and too small for future supplies. With several new desires in mind, Yunos set off through the night, hoping to find a town with larger equipment and better food. At dawn, Yunos finally reached a ruined town hidden by overgrown vegetation and recognized it as a long-abandoned settlement. While exploring the area, he discovered an old anti-aircraft gun and felt nostalgic for the technology of the former empire. Memories surfaced of how such weapons once protected the empire from flying monsters through scientific advancement. Examining the town further, Yunos concluded it was likely an inner settlement rather than a border stronghold. A faded sign then caught his attention, and he carefully tried to identify the town despite the weathered letters. After identifying his location on the map, Yunos considered several routes and decided the abandoned town might still contain useful information. He began searching the ruins, relying on his senses to uncover anything left behind by the former empire. A foul odor suddenly reached him, and Yunus immediately recognized the presence of hostile monsters nearby. Leaving his backpack behind, he rushed toward the source and found a group of creatures gathering among the ruins. Without hesitation, Yunus leaped into their midst and crushed the monsters with overwhelming force before they could react. Yunus continued crushing the fleeing monsters, but soon noticed they were all escaping toward the same destination. Suspicious of their behavior, he abandoned a direct chase and rushed ahead to discover what was drawing them together. When more creatures blocked his path, Yunus swept them aside with overwhelming force and pushed forward without slowing down. Their coordinated movements convinced him that something important was being guarded deeper within the town. Following the trail at full speed, Yunus finally identified the destination as an abandoned school crowded with monsters. The foul smell intensified as Yunus pushed through the school, eventually tracing its source to the large gymnasium. Inside, he discovered countless goblins, gathered around a massive goblin queen that ruled over the entire nest. Recognizing the creature at once, Yunus recalled that the queen was responsible for producing most of the goblin population. After observing the scene, he estimated that dozens of goblins could be born within a single day and mature rapidly. Faced with that alarming reality, Yunus understood that the queen had to be eliminated before the colony grew even larger. After deciding to eliminate the goblin queen, Yunus charged into the horde, forcing the goblins to defend their ruler. The creatures threw themselves at him without hesitation, but their numbers could not stop his relentless advance. Soon, the battlefield was covered with defeated goblins, leaving only the queen and a few guards behind. However, the overwhelming stench surrounding the nest made Yunus reluctant to approach any closer than necessary. Searching for another solution, he stepped back and began considering a way to defeat the remaining enemies from a distance. Yunus considered attacking from a distance and realized accuracy would not matter if the target was large enough. Using debris as a projectile, he launched a powerful throw that struck the goblin queen and damaged her body. Although the first attempt missed its intended mark, Yunus calmly adjusted his aim and prepared another attack. Several accurate hits followed, tearing through the queen and steadily destroying her massive frame. With the goblin queen finally dead, the nest collapsed, and Yunus felt satisfied that he had removed the threat without suffering harm. With the goblin queen defeated, Yunus noticed the foul smell covering his body and began searching for a place to clean himself. After washing away the filth, he felt refreshed and decided to continue exploring the abandoned town, confident that a settlement of this size would contain useful supplies. His exploration paid off when he discovered a large shopping mall that had survived the passage of time. Inside, Yunus excitedly gathered useful equipment, finding a large hiking backpack and cooking tools that would aid his future travels. Delighted by his discovery, Yunus eagerly continued exploring the shopping mall in search of useful supplies. Moving through different sections, he inspected food and household goods, though many items had long since expired. Before long, he assembled a practical travel set, filling his upgraded backpack with equipment for future journeys. A sudden realization struck him when he remembered that he had come to investigate the empire's history. Fortunately, Yunus had already collected books and documents, allowing him to begin researching the forgotten past. While reviewing old magazines and newspapers, Yunus realized that 2 centuries had erased much of the information he sought. Among the surviving records, he learned that the empire had been losing the war and suffering major setbacks on multiple fronts. More importantly, Yunus became fixated on events that occurred on May 25, 1667. Sensing they were crucial, references to an ultimate measure appeared repeatedly, causing unease as he studied the fragmented reports. By the end of his research, Yunus began fearing that his homeland might have been completely destroyed. While reading the collected records, Yunus reflected on the imperial capital. After organizing his thoughts, he decided that reaching the capital someday was the only way to confirm the truth. For now, Yunus chose a smaller goal and planned to visit Lukdil near the Canaan border. First elsewhere, news of a dangerous goblin den prompted local leaders to discuss a response and seek capable fighters. As the meeting continued, Orlando was asked to join the operation, placing him at the center of the coming mission. After hearing the request, Orlando accepted the mission and viewed it as a good opportunity to train the team's newest members. Taking charge of the operation, Orlando confidently promised to eliminate the goblin threat, provided the guild offered a worthwhile reward in return. Monsters wandered through the forest unaware someone hidden nearby, quietly tracked their every move. High above, Yunus clung to the tree, his monstrous body blending with shadows and bark. He suddenly leapt down, revealing himself confidently, monstrous form moving with practiced ease and control. Activating his mimicry ability, Yunus startled the group, accidentally unleashing a surge of raw strength, Reflecting on his actions, Yunos realized the Empire's science had turned him into something overwhelming. Lying motionless on the bed, Yunos realized his transformed body no longer required sleep or rest. While walking through the woods, he considered the danger of collapsing from unnoticed hunger or fatigue. Two warriors stood by his side, their presence suggesting cooperation in the face of shared threats. A distant castle wall caught his attention, confirmation that he had reached the town of Lukdil. From the open gate, monsters rushed out in panic, forcing Yunos to question the unfolding conflict. Yunos activated his camouflage ability, intending to infiltrate the chaotic scene unfolding near the town. Within Lukdil, ruined buildings stood buzzing with noise as distorted broadcasts echoed across cracked screens. Two soldiers identified enemy forces by their red armbands, recognizing the advancing troops as Canaan's army. 50 soldiers stood trapped in formation, surrounded entirely by a horde of over 300 goblins. The commander rallied his men with urgency, ordering archers and blades into position for imminent battle. Yunos observed the swordsman's swift movements, impressed by his technique and confident battlefield instructions. Goblins overwhelmed the area, but Yunos hesitated, disgusted by their stench, and unwilling to get too close. After the battle, the swordsman's group gathered again, preparing detection magic to search for any survivors. Surrounded by goblin corpses, the soldiers stood within a field of destruction, wary but disciplined. Suddenly, Yunos felt an unexpected reaction. His body tingled strangely as magic activated somewhere nearby. Yunos panicked as detection magic revealed his position, prompting soldiers to order an immediate pursuit. Leaping through debris and rooftops, he realized the humans had completely seen through his imitation ability. Despite their chase, he believed his monstrous leg strength would help him outrun their magic. Just as he tried to escape, a sudden firewall surged upward, blocking his path. From behind the flames, the commander appeared calmly, weapon in hand, watching Yunos with sharp eyes. Irritated and tense, Yunos glared at his opponent, wondering if the knight was deliberately provoking him. Conflicted thoughts swirled despite not wanting to fight humans. His instincts burned hotter with each moment. All doubts vanished as he locked eyes with the commander, the one who clearly issued the challenge. The knight misjudged him completely, realizing too late that Yunos was no ordinary monster. Watching from afar, Annie and Orlando sensed danger rising, both unsettled by Yunos's intimidating presence. Arngale ordered the rookies to fall back, recognizing the monster before him wasn't a typical threat. Yunos acknowledged the wise decision, respecting his opponent's restraint and preparing himself for a fair clash. Charging forward, he unleashed his full strength, just as the commander called for a coordinated attack. Despite being bombarded by arrows and magic, Yunos endured the assault with overwhelming defense and durability. No injuries were dealt. His presence alone shattered the soldiers' rhythm, halting their momentum mid-formation. Multiple projectiles struck Yunos's armored body, but they shattered on impact, failing to pierce his defense. A soldier recoiled in disbelief. Despite the concentrated attack, Yunos remained standing without serious injury. Seeing his comrades overwhelmed, the commander stepped forward, determined to face the monster directly himself. Sword in hand, Arngale charged with renewed energy, battle spirit rising as tension gripped the field. Yunos stood firm, accusing him of starting the conflict, ready to meet force with force. Yunos dodged swiftly, observing the captain's strike, noting its weight yet. Surprised by its controlled speed, spectators gasped as Yunos deflected the captain's powerful swing, using only his bare hands. Arngale gritted his teeth, aware the tide was shifting. Morale among his soldiers was beginning to crumble. Yunos's presence grew darker, his monstrous form overwhelming, radiating pressure that paralyzed onlookers with fear. Annie stepped forward without hesitation, rushing ahead while determination burned in her focused gaze. With a fierce cry, Annie lunged forward, startling everyone, including Arngale, who called out in alarm. Yunos froze mid-fight, mesmerized by her appearance, completely unprepared for the bold assault. Attempting to block her path, Yunos swung swiftly, but Annie ducked under the strike with sharp reflexes. Drawing a crossbow mid-slide, she took aim with deadly precision, catching Yunos completely off guard. Arngale's eyes widened as he witnessed her bold move, overwhelmed by tension and disbelief. Annie stood frozen beneath Yunos's towering figure, her earlier courage slowly replaced with quiet fear. An arrow had struck his helmet, but Yunos remained completely unfazed, merely touching the spot. Arngale screamed her name as she aimed again, firing boldly from dangerously close range. Before she could retreat, Yunos grabbed her mid-air, effortlessly halting her reckless advance. Instead of attacking, he observed her closely, his focus strangely diverted by her body's soft pressure. Yunos's mind short-circuited, shocked by Annie's appearance, loudly blurting out her exact body size. Arngale seized the moment, rallying the team to strike while Yunus remained distracted by Annie's boldness. With swords drawn, soldiers charged in unison, determined not to waste Annie's risky diversion. Yunus noticed the attack, but chose leniency, allowing them to act for the sake of her beauty. Their blades landed hard, yet he endured, letting them vent their resolve without countering seriously. Arngale charged head, unswinging his blade with all his strength toward Yunus's exposed side. The attack failed again, leaving Arngale stunned and questioning how Yunus remained untouched. Before he could regroup, Annie dashed in, weapon drawn, aiming directly for Yunus's core. Her blade glowed with power, an enchanted sword capable of piercing hardened defense. Steel struck armor, and Annie's determined strike landed cleanly, leaving Yunus visibly shaken. Arngale froze in disbelief, fearing the worst after Annie's strike landed without any visible effect. Soldiers circled Yunus, but doubt filled their hearts. This monster seemed beyond anything they could handle, faced with the impossible. Arngale decided his role now was to help others escape alive. Even as bait, he questioned how long he could endure against such overwhelming force. Yunus looked toward them, raising his hand, prompting confusion and fear among the stunned warriors. Arngale rejected the idea of self-sacrifice, choosing instead to face Yunus without hesitation or fear. Recognizing the challenge, Yunus signaled for a duel one without interference. Surrounded by elite knights, Yunus realized the odds weren't just against him, they were overwhelming. Despite knowing defeat loomed, he steadied his stance, determined to face whatever came with dignity. The warriors voiced concern, unwilling to abandon their comrade, offering support without hesitation or fear. Tension broke unexpectedly as teasing replaced strategy, turning the battlefield moment into awkward embarrassment. Apology followed swiftly, emotions spilling out as regret softened the conflict more than any blade. Yunus stood firm, knowing full well he couldn't win against the monstrous opponent before him. Despite the hopeless gap in power, he accepted the challenge, chosen for reasons he couldn't grasp. Sword in hand, he prepared to fight, thankful the enemy's intelligence bought him precious time. His comrades, trusting his resolve, vowed to protect others and return alive, because that was duty, charging forward. Yunus shouted his resolve, offering his life to end the conflict on his terms. Yunus lifted his blade high, prepared to fight, but expected something in return for his effort. Across from him, the monstrous foe crouched low, bracing for the strike, already set in motion, watching from afar. The girl clutched her chest, anxiously awaiting the impact that would follow. With a shout, Yunus launched forward, driving his sword toward the enemy's core with all strength. Blades clashed at close range, raw force colliding as warrior and monster locked in brutal combat. Yunus was shocked by the enemy's sudden burst of speed, far beyond anything he anticipated. Struggling to counter, he forced a desperate clash, eyes wide with pain and pure instinct. His allies watched in horror, helpless as their captain stood alone, barely holding his ground. Gritting his teeth, he refused to fall, demanding one final swing before collapse took him. The moment he looked down, dread set in his sword hand was melting away in agony. Lifted into the air, Yunus braced for death as his comrades screamed his name in despair. Without warning, the monster spat him out, launching his limp body across the battlefield. Everyone stared, baffled by the outcome, unable to make sense of what they had just seen. Confused, Yunus questioned if he'd been cursed, poisoned, or just incredibly lucky. Rather than answers, he received an insult apparently. His unwashed hair had offended the monster. Orlando's casual confession horrified the team. He hadn't washed his hair in 3 whole years. The monster, nearly vomiting, cursed his decision and vowed revenge for the unbearable smell. Meanwhile, the fallen warrior found peace, believing he'd died honorably after catching an unexpected final sight. Sniffing the air, the monster detected human blood nearby, instincts kicking in immediately. Without delay, he followed the scent through the forest, eager to investigate in his durable body. Bloodied corpses lay scattered, victims of a merciless attack, while a mocking voice laughed nearby. Examining the scene, Yunus confirmed the wounds weren't from monsters bandits had looted and killed. He justified his response. If they murdered and stole, reclaiming their loot was only fair. With the trail still fresh, he sprinted through the forest, locked onto their fleeing carriage. Appearing like a nightmare, Yunus charged with fury as the bandits screamed in terror. Yunus's sudden appearance sent the bandits into chaos, their terrified screams echoing through the trees. Panicked men abandoned the carriage, fleeing in every direction and leaving one behind in despair. Finding no resistance, Yunus approached the carriage, disappointed by the lack of any meaningful defense. Pulling back the curtain, he froze at the sight of several frightened, completely naked women. After a long pause, he quietly muttered his conclusion. "I guess this counts as a reward." Yunus realized, The carriage wasn't carrying gold or weapons, it was filled with enslaved women. Though tempted by the sight, he reminded himself of his real priorities: food and daily needs. Resolved to act, he considered tracking the fleeing bandits, but paused as one woman spoke. A sudden, sparkling scene left him stunned, eyes wide, mind overwhelmed by what he witnessed. Still flustered, he turned away, pretending to sniff the air, desperately trying to reset his focus. Yunos picked up a scent in the air, undeniably the trail left by fleeing bandits. As he followed the path deeper into the woods, he marveled at his enhanced senses. Despite his power, he still lamented the cost of transformation, especially the missing essential parts. The trail led to a hidden cave entrance. Backpack stashed outside confirmed its use. Curious and cautious, Yunos entered the dark tunnel, wondering if anyone guarded it or just overconfident. Inside the cave, Yunos found an unexpectedly organized interior, which made him even more cautious. He soon stumbled upon barred cells, clear evidence the place doubled as a hidden prison. Corpses lay in silence, including that of a child, proof of cruelty that left him furious. Roaring in rage, Yunos stormed through the tunnel, his presence triggering panic among the bandits. Listening nearby, he heard one being scolded for abandoning the women. Yunos felt no sympathy. Eavesdropping through the wall, Yunos easily picked up their flawed dialect, amused by their foreign slang. Knowing he faced an organized criminal group, he imagined the potential loot with growing excitement. The number of voices dropped. With the coast clear, he decided it was time to act. Approaching the small door cautiously, he hesitated. His large frame wasn't made for tight fits. With no better idea, he chose the most direct method, smashing through at full force. Yunos burst through the wall with full force, shouting his arrival into the enemy's stronghold. To his surprise, a terrifying spider-bodied creature glared back, demanding to know who he was. Analyzing the bizarre form, Yunos noted the human upper body fused grotesquely to a spider's lower half. Recognition hit. The creature accused him of stealing his women, confirming this was the true leader. But what shocked Yunos most was the fluent Ferlato's tongue. The monster suddenly unleashed. Yunos realized the enemy wasn't ordinary. It was another Empire experiment, just like him. Orlando stood tall before his superior, unaware of the scrutiny his appearance would invite next. Memories of ridicule flooded back as Arn Gale questioned his hygiene, stirring uncomfortable embarrassment. Shifting focus, Arn Gale leaned forward and reported the goblin threat had been resolved swiftly. However, a new creature had emerged, resistant to attacks, responsible for multiple casualties in their unit. Describing the monster's towering, humanoid form, Orlando admitted defeat against the unknown, gray-skinned enemy. Weapons and magic failed completely. The monster moved swiftly, showing signs of strength and intelligence. Even the renowned Titan Slayer proved useless. Orlando couldn't land a single hit during battle. Both stood baffled. Facing such a threat required more than brute force magic swords and elite wizards. Orlando speculated that the entire Night Order would eventually fall to the creature's overwhelming might. Tasked with reporting the disaster, Arn Gale could only sigh. Burdened by the grim responsibility, assigned to monitor the threat, Orlando accepted the role with a casual nod of agreement. Arn Gale speculated on the creature's origin, fearing future variants might soon emerge again. If multiple monsters like that appeared, humanity's survival would face total annihilation. Surprisingly, one of the monsters spoke clearly in Ferletos, displaying awareness and language skills. Yunos declared his identity an imperial experiment, much like the others who once served. Attempts to speak failed again. Yunos grew frustrated as his growls were misunderstood as hostility. The ground shifted beneath him. Invisible threads trapped his limbs before he could react. Caught by surprise, he collapsed instantly. Panic set in as his partner mocked the failure. Annoyed, the other monster berated Yunos for ruining their abduction plan with his incompetence. While screaming in agony, the restrained monster lamented his inability to fulfill twisted desires. Yunos listened to the twisted confession, sensing the depth of depravity behind the soulless voice. He stood in silence as the speaker bragged about tormenting innocents, like it was a game. Nearby, the aftermath of cruelty lay in the rain while the enemy laughed without remorse or shame. Launching into combat, Yunos moved with fury, aware of the pain from losing everything once known. Determined to end the madness, he charged forward, resolved that this opponent could not be spared. The enemy underestimated Yunos, assuming a monster thread could restrain someone forged through experimentation and battle. Rather than rush, Yunos kept distance, calculating the safest move while targeting the thread's origin point. Despite the attempt to ensnare him, Yunos dodged and reacted, recognizing the trap had been prepared. The enemy taunted with arrogance, unaware of the strength born from Yunos' suffering and relentless training. Breaking through the binding, Yunos countered fiercely, unleashing power meant to crush the opponent without mercy. Yunos launched a powerful attack, aiming straight for his foe's core to end the battle decisively. However, shock set in, as the enemy shed his skin, evading the fatal strike entirely. The counterattack struck deep, acid-coated threads piercing Yunos' torso, drawing a cry of pain and fury. Writhing in agony, he clutched his wounded chest while the enemy mocked him without restraint. Despite the injury, Yunos retaliated, smashing his fist into the monster's face with unyielding strength. Yunos collapsed, his body numbing quickly as poison spread, the enemy laughing with cruel satisfaction. A memory flashed: someone's potion might help. Urgency pushed him to act before paralysis set in. Staggering away, he clung to hope, knowing nothing else could stop the spreading toxin. After a desperate search, he found the vial, clutching it tightly and praying for survival. Relief surged as the pain faded, his arm restored. Yunos stood, alive thanks to the potion. For the first time in centuries, Yunos panicked, recognizing the danger of his opponent's ability. He wasn't a hero, but letting women suffer wasn't something he could ignore anymore. Fully recovered and resolute, he no longer needed excuses to eliminate someone so vile. With the enemy's scent still fresh, Yunos moved quickly, focused on preventing another assault. Ahead, a woman and a wagon were in danger. His target had already begun to act. From the shadows, the villain eyed the approaching woman, already plotting how to break her. A sudden impact from the forest shattered the moment, forcing him to turn in surprise. Yunos stepped into view, alive and unbroken, shocking the enemy who thought he was dead. Frustration boiled as the attacker realized his intended victim was slipping from his grasp. Yunos kept his distance, gathering stones, careful not to fall into another deadly trap. Yunos unleashed a barrage of precise strikes, buying enough time for the women to escape. No isolated, both sides braced for a battle of stamina and resolve deep in the woods. Irritated, the enemy charged forward, unwilling to wait for Yunos to make the first move. Yunos shifted strategy, retreating intentionally to bait the opponent into a vulnerable position. From above, he launched a surprise counterattack, hurling sharp projectiles straight toward the approaching threat. Yunos pressed forward without hesitation, closing the gap as the enemy scrambled and began to retreat. The foe roared in frustration, leaping skyward, unleashing a desperate but imprecise strike. Barely flinching, Yunos countered mid-motion, refusing to give space or allow escape from the battlefield. Dodging poison threats, he advanced tactically, maintaining calculated movements as expected from experience. Adapting with each step, Yunos used terrain and timing, repeating his method with unwavering focus. The enemy protested Yunos's tactics, demanding fairness, but Yunos had no interest in empty ideals. For him, this wasn't honorable combat, it was a hunt, a necessary act to eliminate evil. Blow after blow landed, night falling as the battle dragged into a relentless war of attrition. Fatigue gripped the enemy, mind unraveling as days blurred into one exhausting struggle. Cornered and confused, he finally questioned his fate. Why he, not the monster, was the prey? The enemy's mind faltered, vision spinning, body barely holding together under mounting pressure and fatigue. Exhaustion spread through his limbs. He couldn't create more threads, couldn't recover, couldn't even think. A direct blow landed, pain surging through his core, signaling the tide had finally turned. Staggering, he questioned the sensation: pain, confusion, helplessness, things he thought long buried or forgotten. Memories flooded back as he screamed in rage, unable to escape the nightmare Yunos became. Explosions tore through the enemy's body, ripping apart his strength and shredding his monstrous form. He thrashed in desperation, but Yunos countered from above, relentless and precise in every strike. Wounded and collapsed, the enemy whimpered, feeling pain more vividly than he ever had before. Yunos gripped his limp opponent, dragging the broken body forward, without pause or pity. Silence fell as Yunos walked off, leaving behind only the echo of pain and his fistprint. The weakened enemy scratched a message into the tree, breathing heavily, on the edge of collapse. As Yunos read the strange symbols, a realization struck. It was written in the Ferlato's language. Recognition dawned. Yunos stepped closer, face darkening. They shared the same origin. Both were altered beings, but mercy had no place here. With cold eyes, Yunos spoke a single, final command. His opponent begged for kinship, but Yunos charged forward, unmoved by desperate pleas or shared past. Yunos ended it with a crushing strike, silencing the last resistance without hesitation or pause. He looked down coldly, rejecting any comparison. His resolve sharpened beneath the moonlit sky. Yunos stood on a cliff, his body no longer human. 2 centuries had passed since transformation. Now he wandered through the Republic of Einhell, an elven country unfamiliar, yet strangely peaceful to him. Reflecting on past missions, he remembered the Canaan reconnaissance. That operation had once seemed so important. His journey had led him through enemy borders. The spider threat near Emerald was swiftly eliminated. Arriving at the gates, he stared at the ballistas. Magic thrived, but science had vanished. In Einhell, elves coexisted with nature. Minimal development caused monsters to multiply rapidly across the land. To counter the threat, the border city was expected to hold powerful, advanced weaponry for defense. Shock filled Yunos upon seeing the walls. The ballistas hadn't changed since his own era. Disappointment set in. He observed the crumbling town and lost all faith in Canaan's progress. Shifting focus, Yunos turned toward Einhell, drawn by curiosity and the promise of something different. Yunos moved swiftly through cliffs. 16 days had passed since he arrived in the elven territory. He observed the elves closely. Their magic required no incantations and was cast with terrifying ease. Everyday life revolved around spells. Tasks like fire starting or laundry were performed using casual bursts of magic. But what truly startled him wasn't their magic. Something far more overwhelming was about to appear. What shocked him most, bathing elf women, breathtakingly cute, dominated his vision and short-circuited his brain. Yunos confirmed what legends claimed: elven beauty surpassed expectations. He had seen over 100 already. Hidden in the bushes, he claimed to be conducting biological research on these dangerous creatures. Reconnaissance spot. Number 2 came into view. His mechanical eye scanned the area for targets. There, surrounded by students, stood Miss Number 6. Graceful and composed, she immediately drew attention. Among all elves, Number 6 stood out, intelligent, elegant, and potentially dangerous. She was unforgettable. The nickname, Number 6, was one Yunos had made up himself while observing her regularly. While captivated, he admired how sheer clothing clung to her skin during casual moments by the river. Using his enhanced vision, he zoomed further, mesmerized by subtle curves and movement without shame. Suddenly, the boys struck, pulling a prank with gleeful shouts, catching her completely off guard. Despite her power, Number 6 was soft-hearted, always indulging the children's mischief with reluctant tolerance. Number 6 scolded the children, but her anger lacked bite. The boys weren't afraid at all. Hidden behind foliage, Yunos admired her again. As always, her natural presence left a strong impression. Suddenly, a new figure emerged, an elf with striking presence, and a blindfold covering her eyes. Yunos panicked. Number 08 had arrived early. Her overwhelming aura left even him stunned. What fascinated him most about Number 08 wasn't her strength, it was her incredibly massive chest. Number 8 always appeared with 2 attendants, further confirming her elevated position in elven society. Her behavior felt ceremonial. Compared to others, she carried a mystique that demanded deeper attention. Each movement drew focus. Yunos couldn't ignore her, believing every gesture revealed hidden danger. He glanced away, clenched his fist, and slowly reached for his canister, in silence. Despite everything he saw, restraint prevailed. He remained motionless, painfully aware he couldn't act. A disturbing figure ranted wildly. Yunos watched in silence, unsettled by the man's descent into madness. He recognized the man's strength. This one had awakened earlier and mastered his powers quickly. Yunos wondered if prolonged emptiness had corroded his sanity, turning him into something unstable. Seeing Number 8 depart, he reflected. Perhaps he feared ending up in the same state someday. Suppressing emotion helped. It stopped him from dwelling on what couldn't be changed. As night fell, Yunos looked to the sky and realized it had grown late. Knowing elves avoided the river after sunset, he used the time to clean and resupply. He cooked his meal, sharpened a magic blade, and drained blood with quiet precision. Beneath a crescent moon, he lay on his back, eyes open to the vast night. Still restless, he rolled over several times before finally sitting up in silence. Yunos recalled the other test subjects. Some might still exist if the Empire remained intact. Despite knowing he should return, indecision kept him stalled. Doubt clouded his thoughts for too long. Between him and the capital stretched a vast forest filled with ruins crawling with monsters. Inside an abandoned facility, he found remnants of the past. The last recorded date was May 2nd. Though he feared the truth, he clung to hope that the Empire might still survive. At last he made up his mind. The path forward led to the imperial capital. Sitting beneath the trees, he questioned himself. Would he end up broken, just like the other? Elves filled his days with amusement, yet something deeper continued to gnaw at him. He realized that lying to himself wouldn't work forever. The truth couldn't be buried. Rising slowly, Yunos faced forward, ready to walk the road he had long avoided. Morning light pierced through the trees as Yunos packed his gear with steady hands. He muttered his farewell to Number 06 and Number 08, standing alone on the cliff's edge. From afar, the elves' laughter stalled him one last glance before forcing himself to move on. A young girl stood frozen as the man's sinister smile offered promises of magical greatness. Forced into submission, she endured daily torment, clinging to dreams of returning home one day. Years later, she stood as a witch before the ruins of the place that trapped her. Awakening from a nightmare, she stared at the ceiling, tears falling from both pain and memory. In recall, she walked alone. Whispers followed, but her goal remained: find the monster and end this. The witch offered a silver coin. The woman accepted with a practiced smile and hidden motive. She warned her knowledge might lack value, yet agreed to speak, encouraged by the witch's resolve. While being transported by kidnappers, everything turned violent when a monster emerged from the woods. Panic spread fast, captors fled in terror, leaving the hostages and the beast behind unharmed. Though it stared at them with purpose, the monster vanished, taking nothing, leaving only questions behind. She jumped in surprise as the creature suddenly returned, its presence as unsettling as before. Without warning, it stood silently and observed them, then disappeared once more without a trace. Her instincts insisted its gaze had a strange focus, something she couldn't ignore or explain. The witch offered a theory: perhaps it saw women through a different lens than humans did. Amused by the flattery and the offer, she smiled, choosing to accept the strange ally. She walked through Canaan with certainty. The presence she tracked was drawing closer by the day. Nearby, adventurers celebrated their earnings, unaware of the storm quietly building behind her calm expression. Memories resurfaced: how she'd been deceived at 8, drawn into a trap masked as mentorship. Despite enduring abuse and training relentlessly, her return home revealed only ruins left by monsters. Grief overwhelmed her, rage igniting a fire she barely recognized as her own will to fight. She endured betrayal even among allies, her days filled with brutal hunts and constant danger. Only her unwavering resolve to erase monsters kept her from breaking in the blood-soaked path. During those grim years, she encountered Rina and Liesel's siblings, who offered something unfamiliar: kindness. For the first time, she joined a team willingly, unsure but willing to try again. Through battle and loss, they forged trust, facing death together, yet building something worth protecting. Liesel shouted in triumph: the ogre had fallen, and the battle finally ended in their favor. Though Gista lay wounded, spirits remained high. Liesel was entrusted with the sword's legacy. Laughter filled the air. For the first time, the witch felt truly at home again. Memories of loss stirred within her. Yet the sword reminded her of what still remained. With one last glance, she left behind a promise to return alive to those who believed. With quiet determination, she left the city behind, whispering a promise to reach Rina. Meanwhile, a lone armored figure stepped into the ruins, surrounded by destruction and silence. Having traveled southeast from Einhell, he reached the devastated outskirts of the imperial capital by dusk. Judging by the wreckage, he guessed it was Idris, though barely recognizable beneath the ashes and rubble. The thought struck hard: could elves have caused this devastation? Doubt and alarm settled in deeply. Though his thoughts wandered to elves, the armored traveler kept moving, brushing off the distractions. Even as night fell, he pushed forward, energized, guided only by moonlight and cricket songs. The trail led him to a familiar shape in the distance, his pace quickened with recognition. Shubaru Iron Tower rose before him, damaged yet defiant, a testament to lost imperial brilliance. Standing beneath it, he remembered family visits, overwhelmed by emotion tied to this place. A horde of goblins stirred, curious and agitated. As the armored figure entered their territory, he observed their numbers and stench, suspecting a queen's presence was behind the crowd's density. Readying himself, he welcomed the chaos, eager to release pent-up frustration through battle. Morning light revealed the outcome: countless mangled bodies littered the ground in grim silence. At the center of devastation stood a crater of blood, marking the end of carnage. After wiping out the goblins, he sprinted again, aiming to reach the town of Aga soon. As he approached, a strange unease grew. Aga looked worse than expected: lifeless, broken, unnatural. Unlike other towns, reclaimed by nature, this one lacked green. The color here was ash. It dawned on him: the grayness wasn't decay or dust. It was scorched, reduced to ashes. Standing in the desolate wreckage, he knew his instincts had warned him for a reason. Yunos surveyed the scorched earth, questioning if elven magic alone could cause such total destruction. A chilling thought emerged: could this be the aftermath of the Empire's ultimate weapon? If Iga was annihilated so easily, what devastation awaited if the capital was truly targeted? Despite exhaustion from constant travel and goblin battles, he pressed forward, body aching, driven by urgency. Yuno sprinted toward the capital answers, and danger waiting at the end. Yuno slowed down, realization creeping in. The truth had been there, he just refused to face it. Eyes fixed forward, It had always been right in front of him. Before him stretched a massive crater, blackened at its core, evidence of unspeakable destruction. As he walked through the scorched terrain, he compared the ash to sand he'd never felt. Staring into the void, he wondered, just how much power had it taken to do this? Yuno stood alone, reflecting on the aftermath. If this was science's result, Kanan's retreat made sense. His heart ached with questions. He couldn't call this desolate place home, but still, he needed answers. The Empire's shining towers once symbolized strength. Now he wondered, had their path been a fatal error? Silence broke as something stirred. The wind carried a sound, echoes of something massive drawing near. Two elven women stood gracefully, unaware that a curious creature observed them from the bushes below. Nearby, Yunos greeted his fellow armored unit, offering remarks about positioning and field observation. Amidst their conversation, grim news arrived: an entire empire had vanished, leaving behind only ruins. Recognizing a deeper threat, Yunos decided to shift focus towards studying the mysterious elves more closely. With full attention, he resumed his careful observation, documenting every detail of the elves' appearance. From the bushes, Yunos admired the elves, only to question his own retreat from reality. Sitting quietly, he admitted his current life was nothing more than an escape from truth. Memories of the lab returned. Perhaps survivors remained, ones who could help restore his humanity. Yet the desolate crater erased that hope, leaving behind only silence and dust. Though he endured in a monstrous body, Yunos still longed for connection and a human future. Faced with overwhelming temptation, Yunos struggled to remain calm, his mental gauge nearly maxed out. Gratitude poured out as he praised divine intervention, relying on discipline to survive emotional strain. Accepting his monstrous identity seemed easier than clinging to hopes of returning to human form. Still, a quiet voice inside reminded him not to abandon hope just yet. Though dissatisfied, Yunos chose to seek human joy, even if trapped in an inhuman shell. Mealtime frustration spread among the group. Despite the meat, the lack of salt left them sulking. Yunos considered his options, with trade impossible and resources failing. Robbery became the only path forward. Determined, he set his sights on Kanan, hoping it held the seasoning they desperately needed. Meanwhile, in Kanan, a troubled man wrestled with stress, unaware of what was approaching. Captain Orlando appeared, disappointment clear, ready to confront the chaos brewing within his command. Scolded harshly, the dark-haired man struggled to defend himself, barely managing to claim basic literacy. Annoyed by the excuse, Edward pointed out how others had studied diligently while he slacked off. Despite his frustration, Edward relented and offered to summarize the important sections himself to save time. Discussion shifted to recent destruction. The idea that one creature alone caused such damage shocked them. Yunos, the suspected force behind it, stood quietly, his threat level severely underestimated by official reports. With excitement burning, the man declared his intent to earn glory on the battlefield. Edward sighed, unimpressed, seeing nothing but greed in his companion's overconfident expression. Despite the rebuke, the man laughed it off, conceding that wealth was still part of the plan. Budget constraints worsened. Edward instructed another soldier to accept new missions and assist with training efforts. Discussion turned to manpower. While weapons improved, a serious shortage of capable mages remained unresolved. While Orlando discussed the mage shortage, the other man daydreamed about an ideal, unpaid, curvy sorceress. Jokingly, Orlando offered to share the conversation with Annie, sending the dreamer into a panic. Feigning innocence, Orlando smiled slyly, amused by the flustered reaction his casual threat provoked. Trying to recover, the man considered wiping his memory with an absurdly expensive vintage bottle. Before he could respond, Annie entered cheerfully, misunderstanding the situation and assuming she was being treated. A cheerful group burst into the room, mistaking Orlando's offer as a full treat for everyone. Orlando, overwhelmed by their enthusiasm, warned them while quietly enjoying the chaos he'd indirectly caused. Elsewhere, Yunos stared forward with a cold, unreadable expression, his presence quietly growing intense. Nearby villagers screamed in terror as they stumbled upon a gruesome scene of destruction and blood. Though he didn't understand their words, Yunos sensed their fear and confusion directed at him. A chaotic scene greeted Yunos' caravan. Guards were slain, and a woman lay exposed in distress. Closer inspection revealed the fallen woman's appearance was exaggerated, her chest enhanced with false padding. Yunos silently offered respect for the lives lost, choosing not to comment on the details. Just as he relaxed, frightened bandits surrounded him, realizing too late the threat they faced. Instead of fleeing, they foolishly advanced, confusing Yunos with their choice to fight rather than escape. Yunos launched a devastating blow, sending the bandit flying with no hint of restraint. Bodies fell one after another. Fleeing now was pointless, and mercy had vanished from the field. He pursued relentlessly. None could escape once the monster set his focus on them. The last man collapsed in terror, begging for his life under Yunos's looming shadow. A memory surfaced, his mentor's advice echoing boldly, "Be the one they never forget." A brutal strike ended the final resistance as Yunos crushed the last opponent without hesitation. Afterward, memories of fictional mentors briefly distracted him, offering light-hearted contrast to the bloodshed. As the adrenaline faded, guilt settled and he had gone too far again, unable to stop. The caravan left behind a generous reward of salt, their gratitude unspoken but clear. When he moved on, terrified voices echoed nearby, mistaking him for a rampaging monster again. Joy overflowed as Yunos celebrated his prize, 2 full jars of precious salt now in hand. Thoughts of warm meals filled his mind, replacing the monotony of dried meat and hard rations. Unfortunately, beyond the salt, the spoils offered nothing but a plain, unremarkable water jug. The ornate jar intrigued him, sparking hope that it held hidden magical properties. Testing it revealed only disappointment. A hole at the bottom rendered it useless for even water. Yunos gave up on the broken jar, guessing it once belonged to a decorative fountain. Even with wool padding, transporting fragile containers constantly worried him during the rough journey. He reflected on his recent travels, realizing the need for a stable base in the Empire. Forming a proper base sounded smarter. The more he thought about it, it felt just right. Beyond logic, the idea sparked joy. A secret hideout of his own felt like a dream. With growing excitement, Yunos picked a location north of Idris as his base of operations. Under the night sky, he anticipated a packed tomorrow filled with tasks and planning. Returning to familiar lands brought comfort. Though slower with cargo, he had finally reached his homeland. Something unusual in the forest caught his eye, an unnatural color hidden behind the trees. Curious and alert, he surged forward, eyes locked on the anomaly that disrupted the landscape. Yunos sensed something odd in the forest. His instincts sharpened, and tension rose. Through the trees, a mysterious building emerged, modern, untouched by time. Its appearance stunned him. Yunos stepped through the dense undergrowth and spotted the building, its architecture eerily familiar and unsettling. Debris littered the ruined lab. Those broken pods marked the beginning of his transformation and torment. Haunted by memories, he clenched his fists. Turning back wasn't an option, not after finding this place. Elsewhere, a woman in command eyed Carnash Fortress, now crawling with goblins across its outer walls. Once imperial property, the fortress now stood as a battlefield, bracing for chaos and violent reclaiming. She leaned against the doorway, reflecting on past regrets. Money was the only reason she agreed. Blaming her hardships on Yunos, she fumed. Everything spiraled after fleeing across the Canaan border. As she approached the innkeeper, her cold gaze locked on him with a sharp, direct inquiry. Annoyed by crude remarks, she brushed him off. Her mission: locate the queen inside the fortress. Bystanders whispered, recognizing her as a powerful mage. Shock spread. Kenoshida's emblem marked her staff proudly. Whispers of fear spread as her clan name echoed. Even in Caesarea, it commanded respect. Soldiers admired her beauty, but power kept them in check. Their awe stirred light-hearted competition. At dawn, war erupted. Blades clashed and bodies fell. As soldiers braced for a brutal assault, fireballs soared above the walls. Her chants echoed as magic rained down on goblin forces. With a single blast, enemies were erased. Her allies watched, speechless at the overwhelming destruction. Magic depleted, she withdrew from the front line. That name stirred bitter memories she'd rather forget. While resting, noise rose nearby. Officers debated mage rotations. Exhaustion spread, but command remained relentless. Orders from higher-ups clashed with logic. Mages weren't flamethrowers, and her patience was wearing thin. Sitting alone, she mocked nobles' complaints. They stayed safe while others fought and bled for survival. The fortress grew quiet, with goblins retreating. Soldiers noted how quickly the enemy lost momentum. After breaching the outer wall, the battle ended swiftly. Resistance collapsed in mere moments. With the gate breached, only the Goblin Queen and a handful of loyal guards remained. Orlando charged forward without hesitation, preparing to confront the monstrous queen in brutal close combat. Steel struck with deadly force. His sword shattered bone and flesh, splitting enemies with relentless power. The queen fell crippled, pierced, and overwhelmed. Victory was sealed before her cry even faded. Carnash Fortress was recaptured with minimal damage. The battle cost 5 lives and left 65 wounded. Despite the smooth victory, one officer claimed credit. She scowled, knowing his orders only hindered them. Orlando praised her efforts sincerely. Meanwhile, others muttered inappropriate jokes, drawing her silent disapproval once more. Embarrassed, Orlando corrected their assumptions. She sighed, used to being misunderstood by soldiers and fools alike. Introductions followed. Orlando, leader of Daybreak Battlefield Group, stood beside Lloyd, his trusted and cheerful comrade. Orlando made his offer directly, wasting no time. He wanted her strength on his team. Her eyes narrowed. Talk of monsters, sparked concern. Rumors spoke of something entirely new and dangerous. He explained the situation. An extermination mission loomed. But skilled mages were in short supply. Doubt shifted to intensity. Her voice sharpened. If history was involved, she demanded every single detail. Elsewhere, Yunos approached a facility. Shock struck as he noticed the gate was mysteriously open. Yunos located the facility's breach and entered cautiously, noting the wall damage wasn't naturally made. Inside, he found an elevator shaft. Melted metal and thin depth raised suspicions of prior activity. Sticky threads clung to his fingers. Something had melted the ceiling from within the elevator cabin. That chamber likely belonged to the spider. Like mutant, a monstrous figure once sealed in this place. He descended further. At the basement's end, a narrow passage opened, inviting deeper investigation ahead. Yunos noticed faint movement and realized the gate had opened automatically, possibly triggered during someone's exit. He confirmed his suspicion. Water-powered systems were still functional, producing limited electricity through old Empire technology. A powered console yielded useful data. The Imperial machine's reliability stunned him. Systems were still operational. Despite decay, power remained. Equipment wouldn't last forever, but the current output was enough for now. Underground shelter, reinforced ceiling, and minimal power made it ideal. He saw potential in this place. Yunos declared the facility would become the Empire's hidden stronghold, filled with confidence and ambition. Before finalizing plans, he prepared for a supply run to Islequell, reorganizing gear for the trip. His visit led to an elf settlement. Motivation remained questionable, especially with elves bathing nearby. In his imagination, the scene turned wholesome. Children played joyfully, showing off their fishing success. Reality struck differently. A mischievous boy yanked the elf's robe, causing chaos and screams to erupt. The elf woman gasped, caught off guard as the boys clumsily squeezed and teased without shame. Wone jumped behind her and yanked again, sending her stumbling as laughter filled the riverbank. She cried in embarrassment with her clothes stolen. The boys celebrated their prank with pure mischief, despite the chaos. Yunos admired their spirit. The elf sighed. This was becoming a daily ordeal. Watching from afar, he realized how alike elves were to humans. Perhaps acceptance wasn't impossible. Yunos reflected on the elves' long lives. If trust grew, they might reveal ancient truths. Still, he admitted his true reason for visiting. A grin marked his honest, shameless thoughts. Far away in Recall, capital of Canaan Kingdom, matters of state took a darker tone. Arngir sat in silence, troubled by a report. The knock at the door brought no relief. Marcus, leader of Golden Ember, entered with a knowing smile. Something troubling was clearly ahead. Arngir shared troubling news. A kingdom issued extermination order targeted a new species with limited evidence. Among stolen goods was a replica of a sacred fountain, valued by the Southern Territory's lord. He clenched his fist, frustrated. The mission lacked intel, yet mercenaries were again pushed into danger. If the army succeeded, they'd claim credit. If not, the mercenaries would shoulder all the blame. Marcus offered sympathy, but refused involvement. Golden Ember would not join a politically reckless mission. Arngir accepted Marcus's reasoning. He had no concern for himself, only the younger lives in danger. Marcus explained, Daybreak's involvement couldn't be avoided. They were the only unit with direct experience. News of Daybreak's deployment stunned Orlando and Lloyd. Grant from Immovable would surely be provoked again. Though hesitant, Marcus tried optimism. Arngir disagreed, believing age made men overly cautious with time. Still, Arngir felt something, an intuition. Perhaps the land itself whispered a warning he couldn't ignore. Fueled by questionable motivation, Yunos charged ahead into a territory even humans dared not explore. Yunos slowly stirred from his slumber, greeted by a familiar yet unexpected presence from his past. A curvaceous elf smiled knowingly, presenting something surprising that left Yunos startled and confused. Without hesitation, he leapt from the bed, joyfully recognizing the long-lost part of himself. Relief shifted to disappointment as reality settled in. His excitement deflated in an instant. Sitting down, he reflected on yesterday's exhausting sprint, finally understanding the fatigue gripping his body. Yunos sorted supplies with care, organizing dishes, containers, and utensils inside a long-abandoned facility. Among countless shelves, he pondered which tools still worked without electricity in this strange new era. His gaze stopped at a television, stirring a rare memory of peaceful entertainment and old comforts. A mysterious device caught his eye, glowing faintly, hinting at a recording left behind long ago. Recognition dawned instantly. Shock surged through him as he whispered, was it really a video camera? Video clips revealed shocking moments, showcasing scenes both embarrassing and far too intimate for comfort. Overwhelmed by discovery, Yuno struggled to process the implications of endless recorded memories. Inner voices clashed, one calling it wrong, the other justifying the lack of laws. Conscience screamed louder. He knew this was a line no decent soul should ever cross. Yet with a smirk, he shrugged off guilt, reminding himself he wasn't human anymore. Yunos vowed to reclaim the Empire's lost glory by reviving its forgotten technological marvels. His perfect pick was missing. The ideal model, powerful and costly, had sold out. Unwilling to compromise, he plotted a route to Jisphia, the famed electronics district. Fueled by passion and determination, he sprinted off, declaring his cause with dramatic flair. Drenched in sweat, he finally reached Jisphia, ready to hunt down his precious device. After a long journey, Yunos approached the city with hope that the device was still available. Instead of a store, he found a grim sight: an orc hung as a brutal warning. Without time to react, a horned figure launched a powerful attack, declaring the area off limits. He quickly recognized the Red Ogre's strength and intelligence, far surpassed typical monsters he'd faced. Resolved to fight, Yunos clenched his fist and stepped forward, ready to answer the challenge. Blows collided with force, shaking Yunos, as he faced raw strength unlike anything he had encountered. The Red Ogre struck relentlessly, driving him back with power that demanded his full focus. Neither held back. Fists flew as the battle turned into a brutal, unforgiving test of survival. Blood sprayed with every hit, each fighter unleashing punishing attacks without hesitation or mercy. Despite injuries, Yunos stood firm, grappling the ogre mid-charge, refusing to yield under pressure. A crushing blow ended the battle, blood splattering across the ground as silence followed. Yunos stood tall, fully healed, confident that his strength now rivaled anything on land. With no threats left, he resumed his true objective: locating the elusive high-end video camera. His eyes scanned the shelves until a familiar shape finally caught his attention. Excitement surged as he reached forward, victorious not in battle but in acquisition. While preparing to watch, Yunos grabbed extra cameras and a large stock of blank discs. She located a full set of adult-themed movies already translated and ready for viewing. Stacks surrounded him as he justified his choices, calling it a simple compatibility test. Before starting, he composed himself in full concentration, determined to give full viewing attention. Even so, hunger took priority, prompting him to grill meat before the main event. Using salt brought from Arquel, Yunos carefully seasoned the meal with attention to detail, grilled to perfection. The steak was plated and proudly named his signature cooking style. Each bite overwhelmed him with flavor, the rich salt enhancing every juicy mouthful. Finishing his meal, he reflected on improvements, considering better spice combinations for next time. Without pause, he moved to the sink, cleaning up efficiently after his satisfying feast. The facility surprised him further. Not only did electricity still work, but running water flowed freely. Grateful for the convenience, Yunos admired the Empire's ingenuity. While sipping freshly drawn water, returning to his room, he set up the massive screen and player for viewing. Anticipation peaked as he prepared the disc, his expression tense with nervous excitement. Hands trembled while loading the disc. This moment had been far too long in the making. Clutching the disc case tightly, Yunos pleaded silently, hoping the content would finally play. Seconds ticked by as the screen remained black, the silence becoming heavier with each moment. Panic grew. He refused to believe all his effort had led to a dead end. Desperation mounted as disc after disc loaded, yet none produced. Even a single frame collapsed in defeat. Yunos stared blankly. 50 discs, and not one had worked. Realization hit: if the discs failed, maybe the video cameras had also deteriorated over time. Yunos clung to hope, checking the red light as he nervously tested the recording function. The screen remained dark. A scream followed. Nothing worked, not even freshly recorded footage. Despair turned to blame as he questioned the Empire's durability after 200 years of decay. A sudden idea sparked: maybe the disc player was the issue. He bolted for Airkel. Yunos stared at the disc cover, tempted to try again despite repeated failure. Hope stirred as he imagined one day filming or finally watching those elusive adult videos. That fragile hope felt like his last thread of sanity in a world long decayed. He promised himself he'd try again, but not today. Sleep would restore what resolve remained. In his dream, familiar women smiled in swimsuits, as if rewarding his patience with fantasy. Memories of the unwatched disc lingered in his mind, mixing fleeting joy with quiet regret. Yunos lay defeated, buried in disappointment after his attempt to relax failed completely. To lift his spirits, he headed toward the Canaan highway in search of simple seasoning. Hidden in the bushes, he spotted immobilized wagons. No camouflage was needed for this opportunity. As he emerged, his sudden appearance terrified the nearby men, sending them into a panic. They fled in haste, leaving supplies behind. Yunus calmly took what remained, strangely satisfied by their reaction. Yunus examined the dried meat, unsettled by its chemical stench as steam rose unnaturally from it. Realization struck too late he'd been tricked. Suspicion turned to alertness as hooves thundered nearby. The Canaan kingdom's army approached in full formation, outnumbering the defending mercenaries. Estimating hundreds of soldiers, Yunus admitted he misjudged them. Fleeing now wasn't an option anymore. Weighing his choices, he considered holding back or unleashing everything. Either way, the result felt inevitable. As Yunus weighed his options, imaginary voices urged him to crush the enemy without mercy. Realizing the consequences, he predicted tighter security and fewer wagons crossing Canaan from now on. Floating confidently before the gathered troops, he faced them head-on without hesitation or fear. The commander declared war, accusing him of falling into their trap and insulting their kingdom. Yunus smirked at the theatrics, embracing his own aggression like an actor on stage. Yunus accepted the challenge without hesitation, prepared to confront the army face-to-face on his terms. The commander barked orders to attack, forcing his hesitant archers into action. Arrows bounced harmlessly off his armor, proving that standard tactics were utterly ineffective. While chaos stirred, a mounted warrior charged forward, prompting Yunus to consider the mercenary's role. Observing the attacker, he calmly sized up the halberd-wielding soldier, ready for direct combat. The knight charged with force, roaring atop his horse as Yunus prepared to intercept. A sudden magic attack followed the strike, prompting Yunus to quickly reassess the situation. His opponent dismounted mid-combat, abandoning both mount and weapon in a swift surprise maneuver. A magical explosion engulfed the field, yet Yunus emerged untouched and calmly claimed his turn. Despite his defense, the enchanted halberd grazed him, sparking curiosity and excitement about this unique opponent. Yunus dodged a flurry of spinning halberd strikes, weaving through the deadly arcs with precision. He observed the mercenary captain's fierce attacks, acknowledging the group's chaotic and relentless fighting spirit. A sudden counter surprised him, knocking him back with unexpected power and leaving him awestruck. Despite the hit, he dashed forward again, refusing to let the battle end in retreat. With a crushing blow to the chest, Yunus sent the captain crashing violently to the ground. With the captain defeated, Yunus taunted the soldiers, daring the next challenger to step forward. Panicked commanders yelled for archers and mages to attack, urging them to stop the monster. Surrounded by swirling spells, Yunus welcomed the chaos, finally sensing the thrill of true battle. Suddenly, familiar faces appeared, triggering a wave of trauma from past encounters and old pain. Fueled by emotion, he charged at one of them, fists clenched, ready to settle the score. The swordsman recognized Yunus's adaptability, noting how quickly it shifted from defense to evasion. Yunus launched a furious punch, but his opponent dodged with a knowing smirk. The counterattack landed cleanly, causing Yunus to stagger. That blow carried unexpected weight and skill. Realization dawned he'd been outmaneuvered. While distracted, enemy forces closed in from all sides. Forced to refocus, Yunus faced mounting pressure as archers, mages, and a skilled swordsman surrounded him. Yunus noticed the enemy's formation was chaotic, with arrows flying at disorganized intervals and aim through the confusion. A fierce blonde woman charged forward, undeterred by the hail of arrows. He questioned her intent, unsure what she hoped to achieve with a magic sword. Just before striking, she smirked confidently, closing the gap with precise, agile movements. Her blade released a strange fluid. Realization hit, she had coated it with poison mid-assault. A dark surge exploded outward as Yunus released his strength, stunning everyone watching the battlefield. Nearby soldiers panicked. The sheer power redirected massive spells, leaving them questioning how to respond. For the first time since his transformation, Yunus felt genuine excitement facing this relentless pressure. He warned his enemies to fight seriously, declaring that playtime was now over. As chaos erupted, the remaining soldiers broke ranks in fear, while Yunus sighed in disappointment. A powerful punch from Yunus sent shockwaves through the Canaan army, breaking their will to fight. Just as panic spread, reinforcements arrived. Lord Cassandra joined Martis, reigniting hope in their formation. Despite the arrival, Yunus easily crushed the remaining troops. Only the elite fighters remained. Without hesitation, the vanguard rushed forward. One warrior led the charge, signaling an all-out assault. Amid coordinated attacks, Yunus recognized their tactic distraction through brute force, while others moved in. Yunos detected the ambush before it landed, countering their strike mid-motion with swift precision. Once the dust settled, he stood alone as bodies of defeated warriors scattered the field. While reflecting on the aftermath, he noted that most were likely still alive, just unfortunate. Suddenly, a powerful projectile came spinning toward him, forcing him to dodge immediately. Relieved, he examined the embedded crystal, realizing it could have pierced him if it struck directly. Despite expending tremendous energy, the mage still possessed a vast reserve of magic power. Moments later, her strength gave out, leaving her fully exposed and unable to hide anymore. Curious, Yunos approached cautiously to confirm her identity, noting her condition without letting his guard down. In a surprise move, she lunged with a concealed weapon, catching him off guard. Pinned in close, Yunos recognized her final trick, but remained unfazed, amused by her persistent resistance. Yunos stood stunned, overwhelmed by the sudden sensation as the mage collapsed into his arms. Recognition dawned. He had seen her once before, though she looked slightly different. Then, memories clicked. She was the woman from the ogre fight, now fully revealed before him. Inside a quiet chapel, a devoted sister knelt alone, her heart troubled by past memories. She prayed with closed eyes, recalling the faces of two familiar knights from her past. Far away, a curvy, loud woman stirred confusion as a monster recognized her by her body alone. Yunos looked up, realizing the one chasing him across regions had a frightening motive. Feeling he'd paid his debt by returning stolen potions, Yunos prepared to flee once again. Yunos emerged from the bushes with a captured woman in his grip, startling the nearby soldiers. Relieved they weren't the target, the knights nervously joked at the mercenary woman's misfortune. A furious commander barked orders for retreat, berating the soldiers for their utter uselessness during the encounter. The woman struggled fiercely, suspecting Yunos saw her as prey and feared his monstrous intentions. Refusing to be humiliated, she shouted defiantly, demanding death over being treated like a monster's prize. After handing over the sword, Yunos quietly walked away, leaving the witch confused by his gesture. She shouted after him, insisting humans weren't his toys, her emotions suddenly overwhelming her composure. Later, Yunos waded into a river alone, seeking food and distance from the earlier encounter. By the fire, he grilled fish, and thought fondly about her figure with dreamy affection. Recalling her boldness, he reflected that her openness had surprisingly boosted his opinion of her. Pain lingered behind Yunos' mask. He understood humanity's fear because he once was human too. Earlier that day, he'd enjoyed the scuffle, though it felt more like training than battle. Still, even now, he realized his strength remained too overwhelming for peaceful acceptance. Carrying logs among villagers, he imagined a future where monsters and humans coexisted side by side. Under the moonlight, he quietly ate alone, savoring the moment in silent contemplation. Beside the fire, Yunos reflected that staying in Canaan would be dangerous after his battle. Morning would bring patrols, but he planned to earn one last reward before slipping away. Elsewhere, the witch calmly tended her gear while a noble ordered treatment for the injured. Under the tree, Orlando reassured his comrades that he was fine despite recent wounds. A knight smiled, relieved the casualties were fewer than expected, calling it a rare victory. A commanding woman reminded Lloyd of his strengths, expecting him to grasp the situation clearly. Elsewhere, a soldier realized bitterly they had been nothing more than playthings in someone's scheme. Out of 557 deployed, only 18 died, but 456 were wounded, proof the enemy held back. Leaders scrambled to shift blame. Despite warnings, all responsibility was forced onto the mercenary guild. As judgment was declared, a noble proclaimed punishment for those who concealed battlefield truths. An enraged officer slammed his fist, furious that the intelligence he provided was being ignored. He reflected bitterly since the Empire's fall, the guild's standing had only continued to decline. Tears welled as he admitted his helplessness to protect the mercenaries under his charge. His clenched fist trembled, knowing the truth must be spoken, no matter how painful. With sorrow, he apologized to Orlando, mourning another mercenary unit lost under his watch. No matter how much she thought about it, the witch couldn't understand Yunos at all. Her kingdom had long studied monsters, and she considered herself knowledgeable until now. Yunos recognized both her and Orlando, something too unusual for any typical monster. With a sharp gaze, she questioned how such intelligence could allow face and voice recognition. Even she had only heard of such monsters in stories. Doubting anything like that truly existed, she pondered if she was truly a magic sword after all. She was easily taken. Shock crossed her face as she recognized the voluptuous figure of Diara nearby. Eduard and Orlando tried to intervene, but she insisted her goal was complete and apologized. Still, she couldn't leave things unresolved. Letting him go like this wasn't an option anymore. Far away, A girl prayed softly, unaware of the changes already set into motion. While lost in thought, she recalled the moment her power had been effortlessly stolen. Recognition dawned as her eyes locked onto the figure Diera, the one responsible for the theft. Despite protests, the mage announced her departure. Her mission was done, and she owed no one turning back. She changed her mind. Leaving things unresolved wasn't an option anymore. Far away, her younger sister stared at the sky, unaware of the battle about to begin. Without warning, a heavy punch struck his face, halting any words he planned to say. Tension filled the room as Edward revealed a dangerous mission, leaving her visibly shaken. The order included her as well. Refusal meant criminal status, regardless of intention or strength. With a cold smile, he reminded her escape from Canaan wouldn't be easy anymore. Realizing the assignment meant near certain death, she erupted in outrage, calling it a hidden execution. Dira demanded answers, unwilling to be treated as a scapegoat for someone else's failure. Choosing to flee meant being hunted by the kingdom, worsening the fate of every mercenary. Resolute and intense, he looked her in the eye and asked for her strength. With a trembling voice, she whispered her sister's name, grasping the potion at her side. Elsewhere, a bizarre armored creature enjoyed peppered slime, unaware of the turmoil unfolding nearby. For 3 straight days, Yunos devoured meat with enthusiasm, savoring each meal with growing monotony. Eventually, the flavor dulled. He found himself craving vegetables instead of endless slabs of meat. Sitting alone by the fire, he questioned his lingering human desires for balance and variety. Thoughts of fruits led him to consider elves. Perhaps they held the answer to his craving. Despite the temptation, conflict with elves over food felt excessive. Raiding southern farms was also out. Forced by hunger, Yunos chose Canaan as his next destination. Despite earlier hesitation, he reviewed old maps and remembered potential farming zones criminals once inhabited for labor. Planning his approach, he marked the first candidate site northeast of Emilayad as his target. Arriving at a high vantage point, he paused near an old elven watchpost to observe. Before advancing, he secured water, knowing resupply points might be scarce during the next stretch. Thoughts drifted to elven beauty, but Yunos quickly reminded himself to focus on the mission. He descended early from the watchpoint, eager to scout the nearby river for movement. No one appeared. Suspicion grew as he hid in the bushes, scanning the quiet area. Despite rising tension, he tried to stay calm and decided to wait one more night. Another day passed. Still, no one came. Frustration built under the silent waterfall's gaze. Yunos, desperate for answers, resolved to wait just one more day at the empty river. He questioned if the elves had sensed him and avoided the area altogether. Unable to intervene in elf affairs, he accepted that the surveillance task was stalled. Shaking off frustration, he shifted focus toward vegetables, pretending it would lift his spirits. The second target turned out fruitless, but the presence of a farm confirmed his instincts. Yunos stood disappointed. The second candidate site turned out to be a complete failure, despite frustration. He recalled there were still options nearby and tried to reorient his plan. Acknowledging his flawed memory, he set off southeast, determined to address his inefficiencies later. Upon arrival, the third site revealed what seemed to be an abandoned village, though deserted. Signs of recent life remained. The village hadn't been empty for long. Signs of destruction marked the village, yet there were no traces of human resistance. Analyzing the scene, Yunos suspected a stealthy predator, possibly a shadow viper, was behind the attack. The massive snake wasn't hostile to him. Still, he remained alert while discovering nearby crops. Unfortunately, the crops hadn't matured, and rats had overrun the storage. This location was another failure. Navigating the dense forest proved difficult. Thick trees slowed him as he attempted to cross the mountain. Yunos heard multiple human footsteps nearby, far more than just a few survivors. He attempted to get a clearer view, unaware the slope beneath him was unstable. The ground gave way, sending him sliding down the hillside in a cloud of dust. At the bottom, he blamed his recent bad luck and lack of motivation for the fall. As he looked up, a large group of armed soldiers stood before him, waiting. Yunos realized his luck had truly run out after being recognized deep in the mountains. The gathered group mocked one of their own, blaming his scent for attracting trouble. He stood ready but showed no intent to fight, hoping they'd just let him leave. To his surprise, Diera suddenly appeared, cutting through the tension with her commanding presence. Without warning, she lunged forward, smashing into him with overwhelming force and pride. Diera ended the encounter abruptly, leaving Yunos unsure if that slap was thanks or revenge. Confused, he worried she had figured out he identified her mainly by her chest. He apologized sincerely, only to be punished again with swift and merciless force. After the scolding, both calmed down and noticed a strange trail in the dirt. Suspecting a shadow viper, Yunos watched as Diera began to sign instructions without speaking. Diera extended her hand, boldly asking Yunos to help her defeat the dangerous monster. Others doubted her choice, questioning the wisdom of trusting an unknown creature in battle. Yunos admitted there was no benefit for him, recalling a time he might have found one. He had long abandoned the idea of gaining favor with people or seeking connection, despite protests. Diera stood firm. Yunos, impressed by her resolve, muttered about her fluency in Canaanese. Diera pleaded for help, her determination unwavering despite the overwhelming odds in front of her. The armored being stood silently, processing her words, while the warrior nearby watched with uncertainty. Without a word, he hoisted her up, surprising everyone with his sudden cooperation. His gesture startled her, but he confidently proposed his condition: 5 magic potions for his assistance. Shocked, she realized he understood her perfectly, breaking her assumptions about monsters lacking intelligence. Determined, Diera extended her hand, ready to face the danger ahead regardless of the cost. Her comrades hesitated, doubting her choice to ally with an unknown monster in such a critical fight. Despite recognizing there was no benefit for him, the armored figure recalled his past gratitude to the village. He silently stepped forward, offering his help, surprising everyone with his unexpected resolve and readiness to negotiate. With an agreement sealed through exchanged potions, Diera mounted the golem, prepared to fight the enemy together. The armored man sensed familiar footsteps and froze, realizing someone from his past had arrived. A large group confronted him deep in the forest, and he reluctantly prepared for conflict. He dashed forward, leaping down a cliff, his massive body landing with a thunderous crash. Fatigue quickly caught up to him. Something felt off. His strength wasn't what it used to be. Suddenly, an armed unit appeared before him, surrounding him with overwhelming numbers and silent judgment. With fierce resolve, she stood beside him, ready to face the knights without hesitation.